to another episode of Drive Time on It's a Learning Life for Real. I'm Tamika, and today's a little bit sad for me. It's been a tough week, and it's been a tough week because of the school shooting that you might and must have heard of. I really don't have words, and I'm just gonna say that I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not attempting to speak about this from the perspective of anything but as a parent. I have a school-age child that most of you know. She's a 6th grader, so she is elementary age. The population which this shooting incident that took place in Texas happened this week. So basically, I first became aware of this shooting incident Wednesday evening. A friend of mine texted me and asked me if I was watching the news or watching TV. Basically, I asked him what was up. He said, "Have you seen the news?" And I was like, "No, I haven't seen the news." So he said, "Turn on the TV." And of course, I turned on the TV, and of course went on to CNN, and the news about the shooting at the elementary school in Texas. At that time, I think the death count was that 14 students were killed and 1 teacher. So the death count was 15. Unfortunately, at the time at which I turned on the TV, my daughter was also sitting at the counter in the kitchen. So it immediately caught her attention. And I don't know if it is that it was a bad idea for her to have seen the news at the time that she did, though in retrospect, I'm actually happy that she was able to see it and process it with me. But I can tell you that as soon as she saw the news, and we reacted with all the degrees of sadness and shock that here we were seeing another shooting in schools with children dead for no obvious reason. Like, it's so angering, and it's so sad, and it's so many things all at once, like it don't make no sense, you know. And immediately when she saw it, she got upset, and she literally started crying, and she says, "Mommy, these children were supposed to be the future. They were supposed to grow up and be something. They were supposed to grow up and change the world. Like, we're the future, and they're just killing us." And she started crying, and my daughter is almost 5'2", and I can tell you that she curled up on my lap, and she just cried, and she just cried, and she just cried, and she cried. And as she was crying, she was talking to me, and she was crying for the students who died. She was crying for the mommies and the daddies whose children didn't get to go back home. She was crying for the teacher at that point that we knew of that had died, and she was just not being able to make sense of any of it. And she shouldn't have been able to either, because there's no sense that can be made out of something like that, such a needless, tragic, traumatic. I don't even have words. And of course, this is not the first shooting. I mean, in the US, it would seem like shootings happen every single week, these mass shootings. But I think for her, because the last mass shooting at a school was probably Sandy Hook, or almost 10 years ago, so she wouldn't have been in elementary school yet, so she wasn't as affected by that as this one. So this is perhaps the first shooting in a school setting affecting 4th graders, which, for most of you who don't know, if you're watching from outside of the US, this is primary school kids. So these are elementary age kids, and a part of the sadness she felt, apart from just the obvious loss of life, she started internalizing it. And she said, "So Mommy, if this happened to me, it would mean that you'd be all alone, because you don't have any other children." And she was just crying because, like I said, she was sad for the children who died. She was crying for their friends, because she's like, those friends have lost friends. She was crying for the parents whose kids wouldn't come back home, and she was just crying because it was just senseless. And she even went on to talk about how, "I just want to feel safe." And I tell you, when she said, "I just want to feel safe," I just want to feel safe going to school, it broke my heart, because I grew up in Jamaica, and I can tell you we worried about many things, but getting shut up in school wasn't one of those things that I ever had to worry about, either from basic school all the way to university. It was never a thought or a fear for me that I could be killed at school randomly. And the truth is, for as long as she's been going to school, here in the US, it's been a reality that school shootings can occur, and they go through all kinds of drills, run and hide, what to do should a shooter event happen. And the thing that further broke my heart is when she said, "Mommy, those kids followed all the rules and the things that they taught us in school, and they still died." And when I tell you I had no words, all I could literally do was just hold her in my arms and rub her back and pray. And I mean, like, I had no words for her. I really couldn't give her any good reason for why it had happened. I couldn't come up with any kind of assurances that it wouldn't happen again. And I can tell you, she went to bed that night and she had nightmares. And the next morning she was crying. She didn't want to go to school. She hasn't wanted to go to school. I have forced her to go to school every day since. And I mention all of this to say that the trauma of such an event, even though she lives in Virginia and Virginia is some ways away from Texas, the truth of the matter is, like she said, is that this could have been my school. It could have been any school in the US, because clearly, because of the inability of the legislators and the government to take the action that they need to take, we're living in a country where people can go and buy guns without background checks, and all kinds of stuff and craziness happens like nowhere else in the world does. I mean, these mass shootings happen as in the US. So I don't even have words, and I don't even have justification, and it makes absolutely no sense to me how people could love guns over lives. But that's not the soapbox I'm getting on today. I just wanted to mention that it's so very important for us to acknowledge all the many ways that trauma can show up in our lives. I mean, most of you have probably never heard of ACEs. And ACEs is an instrument that is used to measure how much trauma an individual is perhaps might have experienced over their lifetime. And it's almost like a checklist or a questionnaire where it asks you questions about life experiences that you have had, difficult life experiences that you might have had. And I know some of us who grew up, especially going through hardship, we never made much of trauma, because some of the things that we encounter, whether you grew up without parents, whether it is that you saw somebody got killed or you lost a loved one, some things you kind of chalk it down to just hard life or just the way you grew up. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of us are impacted by trauma more than we know. And growing up in environments where we experience hardship, we are all walking around with trauma that was unrecognized, undiagnosed, untreated, and all of that manifests in mental health issues, anxiety, it shows up differently for all of us. And one of the things that I had to do this week and to be careful of was to allow Kayla to feel her feelings about what she was experiencing. So yes, it didn't happen in Virginia. Yes, it didn't happen in her school. But for her, the trauma she experienced by virtue of just living through knowing that event happened is as real to her as if it had been her school. So in that instance, I had to make sure that I was allowing her to process her feelings, to cry about it. I was talking through her with her emotions, how she felt about it. And I also had to reach out to the counselor at school for support, because I'm not a trained therapist or counselor, and I don't want her to begin to internalize or develop fear or panic attacks around going to school and or not being able to cope with being in an environment where she feels not only physically unsafe but psychologically unsafe. So I have to be thinking, how do I equip her with coping strategies and mechanisms that is going to help her to deal with what she's experiencing psychologically and how she feels physically when she goes to school. And I even spoke to one of my sisters. She's a teacher, and I saw she posted something about just some of the anxiety and the issues that teachers go through as well, in terms of their desire to keep their children safe and the risk that they also face because they're in schools and they're like the first point of defense. That's what I mean. So it's rough on teachers, it's rough on students. If you have a little one that's school age, and even if they're not school age, just hug them a little tighter, because the truth of the matter is, it's a parent's worst nightmare to bury their children, but it's even worse when it's untimely. You send your kids out to school and they don't come back home. Like, I don't even know how to process. So I am just saying to you, one of the things that I've come to appreciate is that, yes, your child may not be in the US, or you may be living in the US and it may not have happened in their school, but it's really important that you have a checking conversation with your child if he or she is school age, just to find out how they're feeling about the news that the shooting took place, and talking to them through the emotions that they have, and just trying to be support for them. Because like I said, most of us, if not all of us, have trauma that has gone unrecognized, untreated, and it shows up at different stages and ages and phases in our lives. So I'm trying to ensure that I'm providing Kayla with spiritual support. We've been praying about it. I mean, even before the shooting, one of the things that we do every single day is I pray over Kayla every morning before she goes out to school, that God would cover her, command his guardian angels to watch over her in every single thing that she does. That's a daily prayer, and every night we pray. But I can tell you that over this week, since the shooting took place, it's been more prayer, and it's praying not only for her but for her school, for the other kids, for the families over in Uvalde, Texas. Like, it's just praying and just praying for this nonsense to end, like for legislators and the government and the lobbyists and whoever needs to take action, because this don't make no sense. None of this makes any sense. So hug your children a little tighter. Talk to them about the events, to just basically see if it is that, even though they may not be in Texas, if they're based here in the US, how they've been impacted by it, and just offering any kind of support and resources that they may need, because mental health is real. Mental health is real for children just as it is for adults. So it's really, really important that we normalize conversations where people either, one, mentally, physically, or psychologically don't feel safe, and find the resources and tools to help them. I mean, that's all I have, but I just felt kind of led to kind of share that it's been a tough week in my house. I have felt really, really helpless, because I'm just like, I didn't have words. I couldn't tell my daughter this won't happen again. I couldn't tell her it wouldn't happen to her, because the truth is, I don't know. This is America. I live in a country where these things happen. They are, I hate to say it, more the norm than the exception to the norm. So it was tough, and it's still tough, you know. But yeah, that's I don't even know what you'll make from this post or this share, but I guess this is what drive time live on ItsALearningLife is supposed to be like. I am driving to get me a haircut, and I just figured that I would just share what's top of mind and what's on my heart and what's making me really, really concerned and worried, not only for my child but for this country, for our children. Because like Kayla said, they're supposed to grow up and be the future. And if and like she said, the next president, the next scientist could have been in that class, and we're just never gonna know. And like I said, the parents, I don't even know. And yeah, I'm going to stop now. So thank you for watching another video. Thank you for watching this. I mean, if it makes sense to you, I hope it does. But this is just my heart and my thought, as I said. So thank you for watching another video. Remember to like and subscribe, to share the channel with a friend. I appreciate your support, and take care until next time. Remember, it's a learning life for real.